behind us and the world in front of us are small compared to the world within us. That may seem weird because, a human body, a human brain is pretty little compared to the size of the earth. But from a neuroscientific or a philosophical perspective, the human brain is nothing short of extraordinary. It's exquisitely complex, amazingly intricate, beautiful, wonderful. The human brain is arguably the most amazing thing in the known universe. And luckily for us, we live in a neuroscience renaissance, in a golden age of understanding ourselves. And it warrants us to think some wild ideas about the future. It's not inconceivable that within our lifetimes, we'd be able to hack our own brains. Think enhancing willpower, improving determination, banishing worry, making ourselves learn faster. A lab at MIT can actually already make mice learn faster by stimulating populations of neurons in their brain to fire at a different rate than they normally would. And another group at Stanford can reduce anxiety in the brains of mice using deep brain stimulation. And this is the tip of the iceberg. The penultimate questions in neuroscience are really understanding how a human brain creates a human mind. Think about it. The little 3-pound organ that sits behind your eyes is responsible for making you think and feel. It creates a person who is curious and creative, someone who can learn, who can love, feel pain, and persevere. Like, why? How does the brain do that? It's crazy when you think about it. These questions have been rising in my mind since college. One night, my junior year, I found myself coming home from a party, reevaluating what was important to me. Really kind of questioning if the things that were important to me, college Amy, were actually that important at all. And I got a notebook. I started writing. I started journaling, jotting down ideas. And one of the interesting effects of writing is that it's relatively slow compared to thinking. So when you're writing, you have to think slower, and at least in my experience, deeper. I started thinking and wondering what it was for something to have meaning at all. Why were ideas and things important to me? How did a sense of value and virtue emerge and evolve, not just in my brain, but in everyone's brains, and in humanity as a whole? What's going on when we have ideas or sparks of insight? These philosophical investigations prompted me to start looking to neuroscience, to researching, reading, writing to professors, asking them these questions. And again, I was told, we don't know. We don't have answers to your questions. At first, I was dismayed, but now I'm kind of excited because I realized that means that we get to come up with answers to those questions. We get to make those discoveries. It's exciting and invigorating and amazing. And so now, let us go on a little journey into the world within. This is the human brain, kind of obviously. It's made of around 86 billion neurons. If each neuron in your brain was a person, you could populate New York City 10,000 times. It's pretty complicated. So what you're seeing in this visualization from Adam Ghazali's lab at UCSF is the connectivity and the functional activity in the whole brain. So the little sparkly things that you're seeing on the outside, those are populations of cells firing, sending electrical signals. And the different colors indicate different frequencies, different patterns of firing. Those orange wires that have lights moving through them, that's the signals connecting to other regional parts in the brain. Now, this is what's going on at any given time. When you're doing nothing, when you're thinking hard, there's lots of different parts of your brain that are active at any given time. But at this level, each of those orange wires is millions of cells. It's like looking at the Earth from space, which is extremely valuable, but there's a lot more to see. We tend to think of the brain as a single organ, but that's not entirely the best way to think of it. So, for example, this is the brain of a mouse. We're going to zoom in to a substructure within a substructure of the brain called the hippocampus. Now, this part of the brain plays a role in learning, memory, and your ability to recognize where you are, or at least a mouse does in humans too. So this little purple column that you're seeing, those are cells. And the fuzz that you see, those are the branches of cells, and they're called dendrites. They look like trees. They receive electrical input from other cells, both locally and from other regions of the brain. And if they receive the right amount, the right frequency, the right patterns, the signal propagates down through the dendrites to the cell bodies, those are the blobs that you're seeing, and outward, down the axons, to reach other cells in other parts of the brain. And in this way, you have directional circuitry happening all throughout the brain. And it's packed. It is an extremely, exquisitely complicated network of cells in the brain. In fact, it's so complicated that you can't even really wrap your mind around how much wiring there is in your head. In fact, if you laid out all the branches of all the neurons in the brain that's like in your skull right now, it would stretch from the Earth to the moon 10 times. It's crazy. It's so complicated. And these branches belong to multiple cell types. In fact, we don't even know how many types of cells there are in the brain. It's like, hello, another great opportunity for discovery. The Allen Institute has recently launched an awesome project called Big Neuron, where they're collecting data from different labs all over the world. And they're striving to bring researchers together to create a periodic table of cell types in the brain. Now, while there may be lots of different types of cells, there is one main thing that these cells have in common, and that's that they connect through synapses, one of which you're seeing here. Now, a synapse is a junction where one cell will grip another cell, and it will send electrical impulses to it. And that's how neurons communicate. Now, this is one of 100 trillion synapses in your brain. 100 trillion is another huge number. These are astronomical numbers, so it's fitting to put it in the perspective of galaxies, actually. If you counted the synapses in a cubic centimeter of your brain, there'd be as many as there are stars in the Milky Way. And you got 1,200 cubic centimeters in your brain. It's crazy complex. And it's not even a static network. In fact, some synapses are stable, but others are changing through decades, years, months, minutes. If you remember anything that I've said in this presentation, it's because your brain grew a lot of new synapses. And this nano-world, this mysterious place of mostly uncharted territory, is the realm in which I work. Now, in order to map out synaptic-level resolution circuitry in the brain, it takes some pretty intense microscopes and technology that up until relatively recently, it didn't even exist. And the biggest hurdles in making discoveries in this area are representative of the hurdles that are faced by neuroscientists and scientists as a whole. And that's that the ability to generate data sets has rapidly outpaced software that allows us to analyze that data. So my journey into neuroscience began at Sebastian Sung's computational neuroscience lab at MIT, where they build software, and specifically artificial intelligence, AI. Now, it's not the kind of AI that you're thinking. It's not like ex machina, robots moving around talking. Compared to human levels of intelligence, our AI is more of a savant, not really that intelligent. Basically, all it tries to do, is reconstruct 3D objects, neurons, from volumes of image data. And that's how we map out the full 3D structure of cells, so we can see where they have synapses, then pair that with the activity that's flowing through the synapses and understand how that activity results in function. Now, up until a few years ago, it took hundreds of hours to map one neuron. Now it takes tens of hours, and pretty soon it'll be less than 1 hour. But even if it took just a few minutes to map one cell, there's 80 billion in one brain. And you can't map just one brain, you want to map lots of brains across lots of different populations so you can understand a range of normals and you can understand different disease states. And then you also maybe could figure out states of excellence in the brain. So while we continue to improve the software that underlies neuroscience discoveries, we also want to still make discoveries. So we looked outside the world of neuroscience for inspiration, specifically to the world of games. Now, there are over 1 billion gamers in the world, and collectively they're spending tens, hundreds of billions of hours playing games. If we could capture even a tiny amount of that time, it would amount to far more time than all of the people in all of the neuroscience labs on the planet. So that's the inspiration for Eyewire. It's a game to map the brain. Now, we launched Eyewire a little over 2 years ago, and so far, over 200,000 people from 160 different countries have signed up. In the game, people solve 3D puzzles. But as they're solving the puzzles, they're actually analyzing data and mapping neurons. So this is what the game looks like. There are, at any given time, 50 to 100 people online. At this one, there are 76 people. That thing rotating, that's one neuron. It's an interesting cell. It's bistratified. You can see there's kind of 2 layers of branches when I turn it to the side. This is one of hundreds of cells. The players are saying hello from Spain, hello from Indiana, Oregon, Finland. They come from all over the world. And you can choose which cell you want to reconstruct within the game. So here we're going to pick one of the mystery cells. It's a mystery because we don't know what type of cell it is. And when you actually go to play Eyewire, you hit start playing. And what you're going to see is a cube on the side of the screen. Now that's a tiny volume of brain. It's about 4.5 microns on each side. That little blue thing that looks like a broken off tree branch, that's a piece of a branch of one neuron. And what we're going to try to do is map it from one side of the cube to the other. As I scroll through, you can see a plane moving through the 3D cube. And all we're trying to do is kind of color inside the lines. Color. And with one click, we added that 3D chunk. Now that's what the AI does. The AI basically segments out an entire volume into 3D chunks, but it doesn't know which chunks fit together. So this is a great example of humans working with machines to create a force that's more powerful than either alone. So when a player in the game has, mapped a branch across the cube, click submit, it cross-references what you added with what was added by other top-scoring players, highly accurate players in the game, and then boom, you proceed. That one cube put me in 340th place for the day. And that's basically it. There are lots of cubes. They have different shapes, different structures, but that's not really it, because Eyewire is about community. It's more than a game because it has a higher purpose. We're working together to figure out how the brain works. And it's generally non-neuroscientists. It's people like high school students and sculptors, painters, tugboat drivers in Egypt. In fact, when I was recording this, overview of the game, our top scoring player of all time was not online because he's actually here right now. Nesterov in Athens, hey. He's in the audience right now. So the top neuron mapper in the world is an animator in Athens. Eyewire is the first of what will be many games, and it's very community-driven. There's happy hours and competitions, and there are bots that query Wolfram Alpha, and a lot of the competitions are actually organized even by players. But Eyewire was kind of a proof of concept, and it's working. Amazingly, it's working. And so the next game that we'll be building will actually be reading memories by mapping out circuits of neurons in the brain. It's a real thing, and it's really going to happen. And eventually, we will map human brain with the help of a community of gamers from all over the world. And games are not even the end. We're also going to be crowdsourcing the software itself, crowdsourcing better AI, inviting hackers from all over the world to create better software, better algorithms that are going to help labs make discoveries from their data faster. And I think this illustrates an interesting shift in science as a whole. I love explorers. I'm obsessed with explorers, whether it's exploring the brain or explorers through history who charted new routes for trade and for spreading ideas. I was once reading Captain James Cook's journals. He's a wonderful navigator. He discovered New Zealand and Hawaii, among lots of other things. But he also took with him experimental gentlemen. Now, it's probably not what you're thinking. It's actually early scientists. Now, these were rich people who bankrolled expeditions and experiments. They brought equipment, and they documented what they saw. This was before the word scientist even existed. It wasn't even until the mid-1800s that the word scientist was even a thing. And throughout most of the course of science in history, you've had to either have some aristocracy behind your name or a master's degree or a PhD. But now, with the advent of citizen science and games like Eyewire, crowdsourcing even of the software that underlies science itself, all you need is passion and an internet connection and an interest in solving puzzles, an interest in participating and being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. And so now, a global effort of people from all over the world are shining light and helping us understand the world within us and consequently, the world around us. We have learned more about the brain in the past 10 years than in the previous 10,000. Imagine where we'll be in 10 more. Thank you.